This is Brother Johnny of Groove 19 Promotions out of Manning, South Carolina. Thanking everyone for tuning in to another installment of the 19 Report. Today we are going to be talking about a very sensitive subject. The subject is entitled Love, Sex, and Thought, How to Protect Our Children from Satan. This is a mature content that's involved with this particular subject. So if you have children, it would be best if you would like for them to see this material, to watch it with them or go through it with them. We want to make these PowerPoint slides available on our website at the19report.weebly.com. So for anyone who would like to see these PowerPoint slides, they will be available on our personal website. As well as today at 6 o'clock, we will be doing the same program over our Blog Talk Radio show and posting it up on Facebook. So let's get started with the subject. The purpose of the subject is to relate and link the three words to one source and then explain how that source gets distorted over time. Love relates to the heart. Sex relates to the penis or the vagina. Thought relates to the mind. How these three relate to God is what we're going to talk about on today. And again, the subject may be a little difficult to follow at times, but I promise you that if it is in God's will, if you continue to watch these PowerPoint presentation slides, you will begin to understand how these three, love, sex, and thought, relate to our straight path to God. Now, first, we want to talk about the heart, which I labeled as the second brain. The heart is responsible for blood flow throughout the body. Whatever is carried through the blood gets distributed throughout the entire body because of the heart. When the mind entertains a thought, that thought is introduced into the bloodstream, which in turn causes the heart to think as an individual brain. If you would go to the King James Version of the Bible in Genesis 6 and 5, it reads, "And God saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every imagination of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continuously." So this is proof positive to those who may question that the heart has the ability to think. The heart has the ability to project thought and pump those thoughts through the bloodstream. We're talking about our children and how to protect them from a satanic world. Love, sex, and thought, how the body betrays God. There are two trees in the Garden of Eden. If you look in the King James Version of the Bible, or really any version of the Bible, you will hear mention the tree of the knowledge of good and evil in Genesis 2 and 7. "But of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil thou shalt not eat of it, for in the day that thou eatest thereof thou shalt surely die." And then there's mentioned the tree of life, which was not forbidden, but the nourishment from this tree was and is gradual and requires much patience and perseverance before understanding of it is permitted. These two trees still remain in the Garden of Eden, and they are influenced by three factors which can make us a friend to God or a complete traitor. Sex, the third brain, effing, masturbation, and molestation, breaking God's law. We are all born with the freedom and the power to choose, or the freedom of choice. The tree of life sits in the midst of the garden. It is through conscious thought that we accept this path. To take this path through the tree of life means that we will go through many trials, many tribulations, much suffering, sometimes torture, and even death. You also acknowledge that the fact that God is one, and that whatever He wills for your life, you know that He knows best. Live or die, God is the greatest. Those who choose this tree remain in the Garden of Eden. Although painful, trials may seem as if though you are no longer there. This path takes you closer and closer to God until you become one with His thinking. In John 10 and 30, it reads, "I and my Father are one." So this path that is mentioned of understanding the three brains, we all have to go through. And the eventual outcome, as it states in 10 and 30 John, I and my Father are one. Now again, we have that freedom. The tree of knowledge of good and evil in Genesis 3:24 says, so he drove out the man, and he placed at the east of the Garden of Eden cherubims and a flaming sword, which turned every way to keep the way of the tree of life. So once you've chosen your path, the path back to the tree of life is actually protected by cherubims or a flaming sword, meaning it is going to be a difficult journey back to the tree of life, but this journey is possible. Those who choose this tree sit outside of the Garden of Eden, and all of its experiences take us further and further into hell, further away from the garden, so far away that we forget that we are in hell. This is for those who choose the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, which means you have to experience everything in life. And even after experiencing some of these things, we still don't understand, so it takes us further and further away from the God consciousness. Some of the effects of choosing to take the route of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil is that you begin to form a personality. You begin to feel self-hatred for yourself. You begin to become very angry within. Also, the mind begins to doubt. You begin to build an ego. You begin to try to protect whatever you feel you have left within yourself. And again, another ultimate outcome of choosing this route is also death. Proverbs 9:18 reads, but he knoweth not that the dead are there, and that her guests are in the depths of hell. Again, you can read this entire chapter, but what it is talking about is the fact that the majority of people choose the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, and in doing so, we are on a downward spiral into hell, and we don't recognize that we're in hell, so much so that we believe that we're still on an upward spiral to heaven, but hell has its rewards as heaven does. Effing, false feeling of love. I use this terminology because this is the terminology that is used in the street, and when you're trying to explain something, most of the time you want to say it in a way that people can understand. This is an English word that is considered vulgar. It is in its most literal meaning. It refers to the act of sexual intercourse. By extension, it may be used to negatively characterize anything that can be dismissed, disdained, defiled, or destroyed, and may also be used as an intensive. When you use this term effing, it's an intensive word. Usually the first sexual encounter is a negative. If you haven't been taught how a man or woman should conduct themselves during sexual intercourse, the experience can leave you feeling empty and depressed. If your heart or love is involved, then the second brain is also involved. Then you may continue being intimate with that person, but the emotional connection moves downward, away from the tree of life. Some of the emotions that you may experience as you begin that downward spiral are fear, guilt, self-doubt, depression, and perversion. Perversion comes in when the mind is no longer satisfied with regular sex. So you try to constantly seek out that feeling or that emotional high that comes with sex, and you begin to experiment with perverted sex, 1, 2, 3 partners, homosexuality, role playing. You bring toys into play. All of these things are affecting the brain. This is why choosing someone to love is a science and very sacred, because there is a blending of the chemical makeup between individuals whenever they share sex, emotions, or thoughts. Masturbation, the ultimate selfish act. Masturbation refers to the sexual stimulation of a person's genitals, usually to the point of orgasm. The stimulation can be performed manually by use of objects or tools, or by some combination of these methods. Masturbation is a common form of autoeroticism, providing sexual pleasure or orgasm in the absence of a partner. Masturbation in reality is actually self-abuse. When we look at the definition of masturbation, according to the Merriam-Webster dictionary, you see here reproach of oneself, and the second definition is masturbation, The third, abuse of one's body or health. So masturbation is indeed a form of self-abuse. In 1 Corinthians 6:18, it reads, "Flee from sexual immorality. All other sins a man commits are outside his body, but he who sins sexually sins against his own body." 1 Corinthians 6:19 reads, "Or do you not know that your body is a temple of the Holy Spirit within you, whom you have from God? You are not your own, for you were bought with a price. So glorify God in your body." So when you're masturbating, you're doing the opposite of glorifying God in your body. Masturbation short circuits the connection of mind, body, and spirit, causing conflict in the brain that can lead to mental disorder. Children are prone to perceive parents as enemies when the parent discovers that the child has been masturbating. The child begins to hide in the garden or lie, and the bond between parent and child is broken, just as the bond between God and man was broken in the Garden of Eden. Molestation, the third factor of sex, murder of the soul. Matthew 24:25 and 26. Then said Jesus unto his disciples, If any man will come after me, let him deny himself, and take up his cross, and follow me. For whosoever will save his life shall lose it, and whosoever will lose his life for my sake shall find it. For what is a man profited if he shall gain the whole world and lose his own soul? Or what shall a man give in exchange for his soul? Deny yourself. Accept the straight path, knowing that suffering is involved. This is the path to God consciousness. When you begin to understand the power of the three brains and you deny your own egotistical thoughts and feelings and desire to serve God in all of your actions, you gradually begin to return to the Garden of Eden and begin to travel in the path of the tree of life. Effing. This is a false sense of love. It leads to depression, disorientation, doubt, perversion, and death. Masturbation. Self-abuse, a sin against your own body. Molestation is the violation of the sacred temple. It destroys the soul. For whosoever will save his life shall lose it. Matthew 25. Whosoever wishes to follow their own path, their own thinking, and thinking that they are actually living life, as you will hear most people say, I got to live my own life, they've actually already lost it. And whosoever will lose his life for God's sake shall find it. So those who say, I will deny myself and accept the straight path, they actually find their life. Molestation is the most brutal of the three because it attacks all three brains at once, causing a mental meltdown, if you will, and murdering the very essence of God in the individual, male or female. Even if the person enjoys the molestation or is a willing participant, such as in incest, the damage to the natural order of things can only be reversed by God himself. Sexual perversion. Revelation 17, 1 through 18. Then one of the seven angels who had the seven bowls came and said to me, Come, I will show you the judgment of the great prostitute, who is seated on many waters, with whom the kings of the earth have committed sexual immoralities, and with the wine of whose sexual immoralities the dwellers on earth have become drunk. And he carried me away in the spirit into a wilderness, and I saw a woman sitting on a scarlet beast that was full of blasphemous names, and it had 7 heads and 10 horns. The woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet, and adorned with gold and jewels and pearls, holding in her hand a golden cup full of abominations, and the impurities of her sexual immoralities. And on her forehead was written a name of mystery, Babylon the Great, mother of prostitutes and of earth's abomination. We have to educate our children about the purity of sex and the consequences of its misuse. Thought, the first brain. Romans 12 and 2. Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, that by testing you may discern what is the will of God, what what is God and acceptable and perfect. There are many different ways in which thought is processed. Our job as parents is to help our children identify their learning and comprehension style so that they are able to understand their own thinking and balance the thoughts within the three brains. In most cases, in schools and colleges, everything is taught in a way that you can only think in one pattern. But as you can see on this website, it states the list of thought processes. There are literally 100 or more ways in which the mind can register thought: by inventing, by reasoning, by inquiring, by calculating, by concrete concept. All of these forms of thought are available for us. But when we put our children into one method of thinking and they are not able to comprehend on that method, we label them mentally incompetent. We think they're stupid. But in actuality, it is our job as parents to understand and study the child and see what their actual learning style is. Thought produces change. Change comes about by desire, and desire is what fuels the will. John 5:30. I can do nothing on my own. I judge as God tells me. Therefore my judgment is just, because I carry out the will of one who sent me, not my own will. When you are dealing with the three brains, you have to work for the rest of your life and having these three brains balance and agree to God's will. God has a will. His will for our life is formed in the womb. The first thing to form is the brain and nervous system of the child. The child is a willing participant of God's will. The child's willingness to obey God is interrupted by the thoughts and actions of the parent. There are steps that should be taken before pregnancy and things we should do as parents during pregnancy, as well as how to handle the child in every stage of development. Our mission is to raise children whose three brains are in submission to God's will. Teaching your child the power of thought. Remembering is the key. Even after instructing the child on proper behavior and how to endure in God's favor, the fact remains that the gravitational pull of Satan's world will eventually get a grip on most of them. Teaching your child the power of thought, the importance of remembering, and giving them a clear path back to the Garden of Eden will prove to be even more important than teaching them how to be rich. Mark 8:36 of the King James Version reads as follows: For what shall it profit a man if he shall gain the whole world and lose his soul? The first stage of development is to teach. In childhood, you teach the child what is required of them in accordance to God's will. The second stage is experience. Adolescence is a stage of experience for every child. It's a stage of rebellion. But if the thoughts have been taught properly in childhood, then we have a better chance in adulthood that the child will remember. In adulthood, after going through many trials and many experiences, at the bottom, if we are able to make it back and begin to start the circular motion back to God and God consciousness, we begin to remember what we were taught as a child. The parable of the prodigal son. In the parable of the prodigal son, Jesus teaches the stages of God conscious development and the importance of remembering. This link is available for those who would like to go to a particular page that I have hyperlinked, and it has a synopsis of the parable of the prodigal son and the lessons that were taught. And all of these lessons were taught based on the prodigal son remembering. And the difficulty of remembering in most cases is when you haven't been taught. If you haven't been taught, then it's very difficult to remember. Most religions and most races of people teach their children their past so that they can remember when they become adults. The flaw in our makeup is that we feel we should hide the atrocities that has been afflicted upon us as a people, and our children have little to remember, with the exception of a part of life that does not go back to their original history. So the key is to teach, to allow, to experience, and also to remember. In most cases, our children will have to go through the tree of the knowledge of good and evil because our nature is rebellious. So we have to allow that process to take its course and pray as the process continues that our children will remember and will desire to return to the tree of life. I thank you so much for listening to this particular segment of the 19 Report. I would like to call it a table talk, if you will. If you have any questions, again, you can click on this link that will take you directly to the Groove 19 Promotions Gmail account. Please, if you will, follow us on Twitter and stay informed with us on Facebook. Or you can visit our website here with the www.the19report.com. If you would like to call us, you have any questions, if you would like for us to perhaps have a table discussion with children or youth or adults, just give us a call and we can set up an appointment. For those who have Tumblr accounts, please follow us on Tumblr, and also follow us on the Blog Talk Radio show, which will be airing today at 6. And if you would like to see the live stream of the video as the broadcast as we are doing it, you can visit us on Justin TV, and as well as the broadcast being made available on the YouTube site. I want to thank you again. This is Brother Johnny of Groove 19 Promotions. I sincerely hope that this information will be of some use when trying to understand in this day and time and trying to explain to our children what is absolutely necessary for them to know. This particular broadcast had been sparked by a comment that was made by my 5-year-old son when I was talking to him about love, and he said that I feel love too. And my response to him was, what do you know about love? He said that I know love. And I said to him, well, where do you feel it? And he pointed to 3 places. He said that he felt love in his pee-wee, in his penis, in his heart, and in his head. And when he said that to me, immediately I began to realize the connection between the 3. Although by God's permission I had been studying this for some time, there is indeed at a young age a connection between the sexual organ, the heart, and the mind. And in many secret organizations, they talk about the 3, or the 3 traitors. And if you look in the Bible, these 3 are mentioned as Judas and Pontius Pilate and Caiaphas. Again, these are things that you have to study on your own. Nothing of secret knowledge has been revealed. It's not a secret anymore. But the secret is in the fact that you have to study it in order to understand it. So when he said that to me, it was only confirmation that Allah is God, God is the greatest, Jesus Christ is Lord, and he has come back, and he is with us. So I thank all of you for listening, and this will be, in actuality, a blueprint of sorts for those who find it difficult to teach their children about sex, thought, and the heart. Love is important, the mind is important, and the sexual organ is also important. And you can always go back through these PowerPoint slides and change them up a little bit and add your own twist to it, or do your own. The key is that we get our children to listening and to understanding, as the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad said, reading and remembering. And as Allah said to Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, read.